and more. This virtual event will also look at the largest trends driving through the change in consumer behavior and how it has impacted the industry's growth. Covering a gamut of areas across the entire digital system, this summit intends on bringing all the major stakeholders from across the industries under one roof to conduct meaningful knowledge sharing sessions, which helps the industry in growing. We have exciting 5 day sessions lined up for our viewers with some of the best names of the industry. Before we move forward, we request all the viewers to check out our agenda from the Digital Brand Fest Summit website and check the sessions planned out at the summit. We encourage our viewers to share the questions for the speakers in the comment section or on the events chat box. You can also share your perspective on the day's proceeding through your social media accounts. We can be found at ITV News with a Z on Twitter and Facebook and IndianTelevision.com on Instagram and LinkedIn. Don't forget to use the hashtag DigitalBrandFest2022. None of this would have been possible without the tremendous support of our partners, and we would like to thank them all. Our presenting partner, Woot, our industry partners, Interact, which is a product of GeoHaptic, Josh, and Pixis. This event is produced and executed by ITV 2.0 Productions. Now, let's have a look at a few partners' AVs. Binny, can we have the AV, please?
एक तरफ तस्वीर, एक तरफ तकदीर और बीच में आपका नाचीज कटपीस रणवीर।
Tiger is back.
The big picture, तस्वीर से तकदीर तक।
It's here, and I'm so excited! Yeah!
Oh.
मेरे साथ बिग बॉस ओटीटी के मजे लूं।
तेरे मेरा कुछ चक्कर चल रहा है क्या?
अरे क्या कर रही है तू मेरा? अरे साइको यार।
गेम बहुत लंबा जाएगा लोग।
Oh God, I'm so confused.
अब तो बताना ही पड़ेगा।
Where y'all up this Valentine?
That's what mutual funds are.
साहिल is dead. सुना तुमने? साहिल is dead.
यहाँ पर ओरिजिनलिटी भी है और करोड़ों दिलों का एंटरटेनमेंट भी है।
Thank you. Well, now, without much further ado, let's begin with our power-packed panel on content is equal to marketing. And for this session, I would like to invite our esteemed speakers, Mr. Kunal Bhardwaj, Senior Director Marketing from Upstocks, Mr. Maninder Bali, Head of Brand Marketing from Vedantu, Ms. Pallavi Cheluri, Director Marketing Moglix, Mr. Samir Sethi, Head of Brand and Marketing PolicyBazaar.com, Ms. Sharman Ali, Founder and CEO from Instorit. This session will be moderated by Mr. Rohit Ori, Chairman and CEO, SCB Group India. I welcome you all and over to you, Mr. Ori. Sir, you are on mute.
Thank you. In today's fast-paced and overly automated and digitally driven society, a new premium is humanity. The internet constantly rewards us for convenience and instant gratification, making the human touch increasingly more scarce and coveted. Now, in this environment, businesses can no longer afford to be faceless entities. To survive, businesses need to connect with audiences, pull at their heartstrings, and engage them on a much deeper level than ever seen before. And that's where brand storytelling comes in. Science has finally confirmed what we've known to be true for a very, very long time. We humans are hardwired for stories. They lead to better understanding, trust, comprehension, receptivity, and much, much more. Stories connect us, engage us, move us to tears, to laughter, to anger, to sympathy, to action. Brand storytelling and content marketing are really two sides of the same coin. To quote David Campbell of Right Inbox, storytelling is one of the most powerful ways to breathe life into your brand and is also one of the main components of a solid content marketing approach. In a research by Content Marketing Institute, 96% of marketers say content marketing has helped them build credibility and trust in their consumers. A HubSpot research has revealed that 82% of marketers have actively used content marketing in 2021, up 70% from 2020. And that's really a big number. Now, with that background, I'd like to move to a very esteemed panel with some of my questions. My first question is to Pallavi. So, Pallavi, content marketing, if done smartly, can break clutter and be very cost effective. My question to you in two parts really is, are content marketers in India doing content marketing right? And are they leveraging their full potential to break clutter, or they're just following a herd mentality where they've become, part of an event just for visibility? And if you can give us an example of somebody you think has got content marketing right, it'll be great.
Sure. Thanks, Rohit. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I think there are a lot of great examples, B2B, B2C, who are really creating content which is breaking through the clutter. The way, we've thought about it is, we say that, consider an audience of one. So imagine your persona, which is most ideal, which has to the best and most to gain from your product, and consider that audience of one. Whatever content you're creating, if it cannot delight that one person, then there's no way that it will delight millions of other people, right? So when we think of a person and then make the content, rather than focusing on, I have a calendar and I need to put out my content as per this calendar because the brand wants to do it. Instead of that, saying that, look, what does this person want? What do they want to know? What do they want to be entertained with? And I think many brands are doing that. One of the prominent examples I would say is Zomato. Most of us would consider notifications as spam, right? But they have created a cult of their own with their notifications. And the way, their customer service, many people are chatting with customer service as if they're old friends. So these are all the kind of touch points driven by content that Zomato has been able to create to break out of, that kind of clutter which is there. I think another challenge which happens is sometimes we get very bogged down by, this is our brand voice and staying within that box of brand voice. And the fact is brand voice is evolving. All of us here today, 2 years back, what our brand was, and now what it is because of whatever it went through in the pandemic, whatever pivots that might happen, is changing. And unless we test and experiment a little bit, around the edges, still staying true to how we can add value, we will not be able to drive that evolution. So I think that is the challenge which many people tend to face in creating clutter-breaking content, that having to stick to a sort of very specific guideline, which is more, I would say, in spirit rather than in letter. So I think some great examples. Another one that comes to mind is what Unacademy did with the IPL, right? That break the code. Who would have thought that if you pair Pythagoras theorem and you pair maths and science concepts with cricket, anyone would want to watch and like, but everyone really enjoyed that. So that's another example of, breaking that clutter. When you juxtaposition that kind of context with a very different kind of topic, that's what creates that interest and can break that clutter.
Yeah, in fact, what you're saying is very true. Especially on the brand voice, because the brand voice can also become a cage, for brands in this rapidly evolving environment. And I've seen, oftentimes, when brands want to create content, in the real world in real time, oftentimes, they also want to do a quick check and a research behind it, and then finally the content looks like an ad, right? So it kind of defeats the purpose of being authentic, of being, completely something like a story that draws consumers in. So you're right. I mean, that's really a big challenge. You want to change, but at the same time, keep some part of it really rooted as well. I mean, it's not that every part of the brand needs to change, really. So that's really interesting. So my next question is to Maninder. Maninder, we've spoken at large about content marketing and native advertising. Let's talk about formats. While there's no doubt that video content enhances user experience and is, most engaging, I've read a Spotify report that threw light on the growing popularity of audio and voice-enabled content. So my question to you, in really three parts, the three parts to this question, is that with attention spans reducing and people extensively watching short format video content, even brands have started adopting this trend. How do you plan to embrace and enhance short format video adoption? Also, why does audio seem to be picking up? Where do you see that fitting in the media mix, and what's its effectiveness? And as a brand, do you see yourself investing in audio content, which is voice and podcasts?
Sure. Yeah, Rohit, thanks for the question. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So this is a pretty interesting question, right? And something that we at Vedantu are kind of getting deeper and deeper into when it comes to finding answers here, right? I operate with a bit of a contrarian view on this. And let me pick it up from the first part that you raised about attention spans, right? Because if there's one job to be done for any marketer, it's that, right? How well can you get somebody's attention to something? So the contrarian view that I have, Rohit, on this is that we've consistently gotten attention spans wrong, right? Our understanding of what an attention span is and how much of an attention span you can hope for, I think we've gotten that wrong. And the reason I think we've gotten that wrong is because we're only looking at it from this vantage point of safety in numbers, right? Everybody's talking about a shorter attention span, so let's create shorter bite-sized content, right? And there's value in doing that. But my point is that actually we have to look at it from a very different lens, right? And that lens to me is an economic lens. And there's a reason I say that, right? Because at the heart of it, it's very simple. It's that brands need to give something of value. It's as simple as that, right? I have to give something of value in exchange for the attention you give. And that's economics. That's not branding. That's not marketing. It's just, am I giving you something of value in exchange for your time and your attention? Now, it sounds very simple, but it's so hard to do. I think a lot of brands, and we might have had first-hand experiences with those, who find it very hard to give something of value, right? It's very easy to let ourselves off the hook by saying attention spans are dwindling. And so we have to create bite-sized thing and do something and get the job done, right? But actually we are letting ourselves off the hook. We are not forcing ourselves to give something of value, because when we do give something of value, I don't think ever in the history of content consumption, I think we've been binging on content the way we have today, right? So there's enough evidence from OTTs and the likes that tells us that attention spans are not really the problem. If you're providing something of value, that's content that's being lapped up, and how, right? We are letting go of our own careers to sit at night and watch certain shows. I mean, the day they're released, right? The entire season we're lapping up. So the same people, we can't get 10 seconds of their attention, right? We are saying we lost them at 6 seconds. They're finishing a series overnight. So that's what I'm talking about, like coming back to economics to solve this, right? So I feel like the contrarian view is that if you've gotten the value exchange right, I think you're going to be fine, right? There is merit in doing shorter form and all of that, right? So that's point number one. The other interesting thing that you picked up on was the format itself. like audio. What at Vedanta, what we've been seeing and what we're finding super interesting is that if our vantage point is how much value we can exchange with the guy, with the person who's giving us their attention, then I think it's a no-brainer for us that we can't pack too much value into performance marketing asset. Like in a perf, that thing, in that scenario, when you're operating at that stage of the funnel, how much value are you going to be able to condense and then exchange, right, with anybody? So I mean, for us, it's a no-brainer, right? The kind of deep attention somebody pays in this format, right? Voice. It's a very lean forward. They're listening in. It's deep attention. They're really invested in whatever the narrative is. So for us, it's a no-brainer that if the yardstick for us is not engagement, but the yardstick for us is how much value can we exchange with this person in that one exchange, then for us, audio becomes very interesting. Podcasts become very interesting, right? Now, whether I'm saying audio or video, but podcasts become super interesting for us, right? In that scenario. And so we are experimenting more and more with that in terms of how we do it. And the way we measure it also, because that's joint at the hip, right? Rohit, is that we don't look at it as engagement, right? Because again, as an industry, we're very obsessed with engagement, but I think it's a very lazy metric. Engagement is a metric that you lean upon when you can't come up with a very clear sense of why you're creating that piece of content. So I'll fall back on engagement and say, oh, I got these many likes, I got these many views, got these many shares, but it really doesn't move the needle on anything, right? So which is why, again, I call it a lazy metric. For us, what we like to fall back upon is this whole thing, what we call the database of intentions, right? What are the intentions that we can spark? Or after a person has consumed a certain piece of content, and there are signals that are far more hard-nosed in terms of measurement. Right? Our share of search, what has happened after that piece of content? Are people really finding us online to go deeper, to find stuff? So, I mean, overall, to answer your question, right, that's how we regard this entire space and voice. And so increasingly, it's becoming an important part of our media mix.
Maninder, I agree with you completely. But just for the sake of our viewers, what I want you to do is just qualify when you say there's an exchange of value. Now, what's the form of that value, right? How do you define that value?
Yeah. So in our case, the way we look at it is every piece, there's a job to be done, right? There's somebody who's engaging with you because there's a job to be done there. The job might be like, in our case, a little while back, Pallavi was mentioning, entertain me, right? It could just be as simple as that. May not directly be linked to a brand metric. But in our case, I'll speak personally from the Vedanta experience. Maybe a student is tuning in and exchanging their attention with us because they want to better understand how Vedanta is capable of creating stellar results when it comes to JEE entrance exams and so forth. We put 6% of IIT into IIT this year. So how did they do that? Right? What's the behind the scenes story? Because in an advertisement, in a piece of performance creative, I can only pack this much, right? Here are my results. Yeah. Here's what I can do. These are my courses. Come and look at me, etc. But if a student's deeply invested, right, what they're seeking and what they're not getting, because nobody is talking about this, is a ringside view of how my teachers actually produce those results. What is my system of learning? How deeply are they invested? What is my pedagogy? What is my ethos? What drives it? What are the kind of human interest stories? Where did these kids come from? What were their conditions and constraints? And how did the magic still happen in spite of all of that? Now, I can't pack up all of that into typical marketing communication, right? But if I do a podcast, which is about the ringside view of how we put 1,500 students into IIT this year and how 60% of them actually came from tier 4 towns who didn't even have access to regular coaching, let alone high quality coaching, right? They just didn't have access. So if that is the job to be done, if somebody is seeking that out, that they've seen the news at the top of the funnel, somewhere there's a level of awareness about Vedanta, that Vedanta is producing stellar results, but they don't know how. They want to consume that. That's the value, right? For me, if I've been able to deliver that, and if I do that through a podcast, I actually get teachers, I actually get students, I actually get parents. And then there's an amalgamation of those three worldviews. And imagine a student listening to all of that, right? That's of immense value, right? To me, that's content that is really getting the job done in terms of giving the student enough value in exchange for their attention. So now if I do 10 episodes, chances are I'm going to hear the students say, can we do 10 more? We'd love to get the next episode on. Can you do a similar thing to give me an inside view of how you did it for NEET, etc. So that's how we measure value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the value spectrum is very large. On the one end, it can be just pure entertainment. And like you're saying, on the other end, there is the tangible, benefit or some, answer to some of their deepest questions and queries, right? So it's a lot, I mean, also, being able to share some content, right? Which is a demonstration of your personality, your point of view, your worldview in a way, right? So that's value as well. So that's great. So my next question is to Samir. Samir, a Forbes article mentioned that creators know how to reach audiences that many large businesses, are struggling to reach. With brands and creators extensively liaising together, I've noticed an extensive dependency of brands and content creators. So my question to you is, are brands embracing the digital creators age correctly? And are brands no longer content creators because they rely extensively on content creators to reach out to their audiences?
Thanks, Rohit. Hi, everyone. So I think, first of all, I don't think brands are only relying on content creators and not doing engagements of their own. I think creator is a part of the marketing mix, and they call it the brand marketing and content as opposed to competing with them. I think secondly, the reason creators are able to create videos is not to sell, and consumers are or anything that is educational for them as opposed to a sales message. So it's quite evident why consumers are also being very open to consuming a lot of content from these new creators. And secondly, how brands are leveraging the whole creator space. I think in the last few years, especially in the last couple of years since COVID, there's been a huge upsurge in the number of creators in terms of the supply. A lot of them, try to entertain you or try to teach you about a certain subject. Now, different brands lying in different categories have been dabbling with various creators and have been figuring out what works for them and what doesn't. Now, for example, sometimes you might want to leverage a generic entertainment creator and try to expand your reach. On the other hand, you might just try to choose which create which has subject expert in the category as well as a reach adding medium. So he would obviously give you access to a lot of audiences in various consumer segments that you might not be able to directly reach. So I think as opposed to competing with the brands, he's just complementing the brand's own marketing efforts.
Yeah, thanks, Samir. I wonder if everybody else heard, because I was getting a lot of disturbance in the middle. Your voice was breaking. Was that all right?
Rohit, a bit of a challenge at my end as well. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So actually, Samir, we kind of missed some of the stuff that you were saying. I don't know whether you're.
I'm sorry. I think there's some issue with the network. I'll try and repeat myself.
Yeah, please.
So I think, the content creators, there's been a huge upsurge in the number of content creators in the last couple of years since COVID. And a lot of them are being able to engage way better with consumers as opposed to brands, is because brands are trying to sell to them, whereas the creators are trying to entertain people, educate them about certain topics where they are the subject matter experts. Secondly, I think not really are now only relying on content creators. I think content creators are complementing the brand's own marketing efforts. For example, there could be a creator-driven campaign that could be an add-on to a mass media campaign that a brand does.
Yeah.
In some cases, for example, like I said, some creators are also subject matter experts. For example, in technology, in finance, or in any other field.
Yeah.
You might want to also use their influence, because a content creator is not just creating content, he's also giving you additional reach. So he's a combination of a creator as well as a reach medium.
As an influencer.
And as an influencer, yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of this reach, this is also a very good way to target certain consumer segments, because depending on the subject on which the creator creates content, you can broadly tell the kind of consumers that would be viewing their content. And basis that, you can also do a lot of consumer segmentation and then finally target that audience, which a lot of mass mediums might not be able to do for you.
Yeah, great.
So,
Thanks. So my next question is to Shamin. Shamin, with consumers' needs evolving so fast, it's only natural for content marketers to keep a hand on the pulse of the latest trends and innovations. That really makes it essential to integrate AI and content marketing. This enables us to understand consumer behavior patterns, drawing insights into consumer demographics. So, is technology and content a welcome change? And with the Gen Zs proficient with technology, while baby boomers are catching up, AI in marketing is now a reality. Do you see AI changing the game for content marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me here, Rohit. So just to give some perspective, from an AI angle, right? So if we look at the entire content marketing life cycle, it essentially comprises 5 stages. And needless to say that there is AI in each and every stage at this point in time. Starting from, conducting research about the kind of content that you want to build, to then the second stage being about building a strategy, understanding what are the channels that you want to promote your content on, figuring out what your budget is, etc. Third thing, of course, being the most interesting and the most exciting one, also from a personal perspective, is that creating and then editing, curating this content. Again, there are a multitude of tools available which are doing this, including us at InStory. The fourth one being, of course, about publishing this content across multiple platforms, digital media, etc. And the fifth one, needless to say, is measuring how your engagement and the performance has been like post the publishing. So there are multiple tools across all of these stages, which basically help us to measure and to gauge how the content has performed, or how the content creation activity is, or even create content for that matter, which is actually very, very exciting. So needless to say that thanks to COVID, although I hate to say this, that COVID has been a blessing in disguise for most of the content marketers, but because of COVID, everything is now gone virtual. So as a result of which, all of the content creation now is happening on virtual platforms. So yes, AI has been a huge breakthrough. And also from a personal perspective, because we at InStory, this is what we do. We evaluate content, we help you gauge the empathy quotient in your content. I think the biggest advantage for an AI tool is that, from a productivity perspective, right? There are a number of metrics from a value creation angle which have been, which can be evaluated and seen. Like, for example, earlier your click-through rates were, let's say, X%. After using our tool, our customers have seen an upside of at least 30 to 40% in less than 6 months. Their ROIs have practically grown 1.5 to 2x in less than a quarter, which is actually phenomenal, which basically validates and reinstates the fact that, now technology has taken over, be it, AI. There are multiple, of course, fields under AI. There's natural language processing, which is, of course, from a text perspective. Then, there is speech to text, again, from, for a voice-enabled perspective. And then, of course, there is computer vision, iris recognition for videos, etc. So needless to say, now is the time that, where AI has completely taken over. And yes, it is absolutely game-changing, because the results that we see from an ROI perspective are tremendous, are massive, and AI is here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Shaman. You're obviously, this is very passionate about this. You can make out,
That's what
and
we
and
do.
and you guys do this really well. So fantastic. So my next question is to Kunal. Kunal, subjects like stocks, policies, NFTs, crypto, metaverse are all becoming buzzwords, and these are topics one is sure to pick up in a chat room. Uh, you even see their inclusion in a lot of recent marketing efforts. My question to you is, what are the next steps for content marketers in the metaverse context? And what possibilities do you see for marketers in the metaverse?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Rohit. And absolutely an honor being at the same stage with you, Rohit. I've always been in awe of you. I, in fact, started my career
Yeah, I know.
So, good you remember.
Yeah, of course I remember.
So let's not talk about the things that happened when we were in JWT. But I'd like to start off my answer with a sort of an interactive session and asking the panelists how much or what do you understand about the metaverse, apart from the definition that's going around. So if anybody would like to jump in.
So Kunal, it reminds me funnily of this scene from the series called The Office, where there used to be this really old game called Second Life, where people used to create virtual versions of themselves and create a whole story about a different life they could live. So seems to be a more real and achievable kind of vision of that.
Yeah, I mean, you are about 80% in the right direction. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out the web definition of what metaverse is and then tell you exactly how simple or how uncomplicated the entire thing is. Then we'll move on to the actual answering the question. So the web definition is, and if I remember this correctly, it's a hypothetical iteration of the internet as a singular virtual world that is facilitated by the use of virtual augmented reality headsets. That's the definition of metaverse on the internet. But let me explain. So what is the first game you guys, anyone played? Was it Mario or Contra? I think either of the two.
Mario.
Mario? Okay. So in
or
gaming,
Snake, actually.
Yeah, 3310, the Unbreakable.
Correct.
Now, so in a gaming world or in the virtual world, these games are defined as linear gaming. Okay. Therefore, you are as a set character moving in a set direction, whether it's forwards, backwards, upwards, or downwards. Okay. Evolution of gaming, just like Pallavi was talking about Second Life. The second phase of evolution of gaming was that you could customize your avatar. The avatar is the character in the game. So imagine Mario, right? You could actually make Mario taller, shorter, give him new clothes, give him a new hat, give him new pajamas, and these games expanded into role-playing gaming and open world gaming. So what that basically meant was role-playing is you could take any character and customize it the way you wanted. And open world gaming was that the game would not define the direction in which the character was moving. Okay, it didn't have to be, it's non-linear gaming. Now bring that to phase number 3, which is what Second Life and what the metaverse is basically, that you as an individual can create your own avatar and have as many possible experiences that you possibly can. Second Life and metaverse, the difference is Second Life was one universe, whereas metaverse is a combination of multiple universes. So in a single day, you could actually go onto Mars, go into the slums of Dharavi, fight a battle, and meet gladiators. And so different experiences. So that's what metaverse allows you to do. So in a way, what it basically does is allows a human to create any sort of virtual avatar that he wants and experience any sort of reality or virtual reality that he wants to be part of. Now herein comes marketing, right? What is the best form of marketing? In my opinion, and of course you guys are stalwarts, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think the best form of marketing is where there is engagement, there is a conversation, right? This is what digital started doing for us as compared to the ATL. Then when we had print, we had a print ad, we had a TVC, and we hoped and prayed that it landed on the right people. What Facebook and digital started doing for us was allowing us to tap into communities, have a conversation which was relevant to those communities, place a product which was the most at the most beneficial level for those communities, and then see the results. So here is what metaverse does to at at a large scale. Okay, what it allows you to do as a brand is to look for and tap into these communities, create a virtual product that can be used by these communities, and it also has offered properties. So, for example, and I'll stop now in just one sentence. There is this brand called shit, I forgot his name. So it's a shoe designer. I think it's called Rocket or something. RKCKT, I think. Racket. Now that this brand was creating what do you call designs for shoes which were used only in the online world. But what you could do as a customer is to buy them in the real world as well. So on an average, the design that was being sold for cryptocurrency or whatever during in the online world is now being sold for upwards of $10,000 in the real world. So therefore, what brands need to do, and this is a beautiful advantage for brands in terms of, again, content creation, conversations, and everything is what Metaverse is doing right now. So yeah, I hope I'll be able to encompass a lot of things.
Yeah, thanks so much. In fact, I don't know whether you've seen that Gujarat Titans unveiled the logo in Metaverse, right? Yeah. The logo. So that's something that it's still new, and I think a lot of people are grappling with it. And like you said, fundamentally, I think the definitions and explanations behind what is Metaverse.
Metaverse now has its own bank, backed by JP Morgan. Ariana Grande had a 20 million attendance concert on Fortnite.
Wow.
It's expanding. It's huge.
Wow, that's great. So carrying on with our questions, really now, I wanted to ask some specific questions to our panelists. So the question to Kunal. Kunal, I had this question for you, since you mentioned somewhere on LinkedIn that you consistently get asked about growth hacks. I wanted to ask you about one too. What's the one growth hack any brand could employ in their content strategy to stay relevant?
I think the biggest growth hack and the only growth hack that I recommend is to develop a mindset of a surfer. The guys who take a surfboard and go surfing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So develop that mindset and explain how. So basically what you do is you break it down into two parts. One is your maintenance of equipment. Okay. So maintenance of equipment and optimize. So basically that board, right? How do you maintain and optimize that board? So you do that by focusing on your SEO, by focusing on data, and by focusing on uniqueness. Now imagine a surfer in California, right? His entire life revolves around that board. The second is have the eye for that wave that is coming in, that wave that will allow you to actually, get on top of everything and become that, wow, okay, this is what that guy has done. And I work with a lot of startups, and one thing I keep telling them is, don't try and create a wave, because let God do that. We can't do that. But make sure that your board is optimized. You have the best looking, most amazingly durable board that you have, which is your SEO, data, brand, uniqueness, etc., and keep an eye out for that one wave that is coming in, and ride that to the best ability that you can. And I think that's the best growth hack in content that any brand can do.
So Kunal, on that metaphor, what happens when the wave really hits you and you go under?
Well, that's what the game is all about, right? There are hits and misses. I mean, there are things that you do which make you, your brand become a household brand, and there are sometimes you miss it as well. But that is what branding is, because you are actually taking chances every single day. And the worst thing you could do as a marketer is to rely 100% on data, because that's not what human beings are. So, yeah.
True, absolutely. I think that whole, and that's what I started off saying, humanity is really the fundamentally now more important than ever before, and that human touch and really connecting at a much deeper level with consumers. So great, thanks, Kunal. Maninder, your Zindagi Ka Syllabus film featuring Amir Khan repeated the importance of personalization in education. Now, personalization is a crucial aspect of content marketing too. So how do marketers today create better experience through content personalization?
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you got that on Zindagi Ka syllabus. What I'm one of the holding thoughts for that was that the job of a good teacher, right? And we might have experienced this ourselves in our own lives while growing up. The job of a good teacher is not just to understand the subject, but to understand the child, right? Once you do that, you'd be able to personalize, right? It's no different for us, right? We're going to be able to put out something inspiring, put out something of value once we better understand somebody that we are going to have that exchange with, right? So I think it's a question that's of immense value, because the better you can understand that person, the better you're going to be able to do that. We do that in two particular ways at Vedantu, right? One of them is this whole persona-specific personalization when it comes to content. And I'd like to give you an example of that. How we've done this is like when you look at the edtech category, right? If you just pick up one segment of it, say early learning, these kids, a lot of brands coming in telling kids and telling the parents, in fact, that have your child speak confidently in English. That's the ticket to the future. There's that. You just repeatedly go on hammering the one point. Your child is going to speak confidently. What we've understood, right? And when this is what happens when you're designing from a distance. But when you actually demolish the distance, you actually go and meet those parents. You actually try and understand why they're still not taking that course, right? Because it seems to be a value. Which parent wouldn't want their child to speak confidently? And yet not all of them are signing up. So what gives, right? And when I was talking to some of these parents, and what we figured out was that the parents want their child to speak confidently. The problem is that they do not believe that their child's going to be able to learn that. They believe that either my child is born with it or not born with it. So when a brand just keeps coming and saying, help your child speak confidently, it doesn't work because the parent believes that not for my kid, right? My kid is not going to be able to. So the little bit of now, if we have a persona that understands what the parent's motivation is, but also marry it with what the parent's barrier is, right? To a trial or to a certain sort of adoption, you can create a persona very clearly on what the motivations and barriers are, and then create content accordingly. Now, imagine me creating content for the same set of audiences, the parents, which are actually doing storytelling of how the kids who weren't able to do this learned to be able to do this, or how some of the greatest orators we know today were actually hopeless, right? When they at the start, and they over time learned how to become great orators. And it's a skill that you can learn. And at Vedantu, we're going to help your kid learn that thing. Now, that's going to have a very different level of conversion rates. At the end of it, if I take that same family down the funnel and then offer my courses, I'm going to see a very different CVR versus what I would see if I did it like every other marketer at the top of the funnel, right? Your child's going to speak confidently. So that's one example of personalizing content based on personas, right? So persona specific. The other one that we invest heavily in is customer journey specific personas. So if I go back to the podcast example that we spoke about, students are super keen to understand what actually goes on behind the scenes in this institute. What's our system of learning? How are the teachers actually going to engage me, right? Because you're not going to get that out of a prospectus. Everybody is going to be talking the same things. But once you get that, and if that's a powerful vertical proposition, the same proposition when I take you a little lower down the funnel, because I know what you're searching for, I know what kind of content you're engaging with, I'm collecting those signals, and then I retarget you with certain specifics. Or then I apply the trigger at a little lower stage, knowing what your journey has been, and serve you a very different personalized kind of content, saying that for you, I've got this offer. I'll again see very different effectiveness, right, of my same creative or my content. So essentially for us, personalization is big on content, but we use persona specific as well as customer journey specific personalizations to see more effectiveness of whatever we do.
Got it. Thanks so much for that. That's really interesting. So Sameer, my next question is to you. There's a fine line between content that consumers like and that, even though it's good storytelling, may still receive flack, especially for a brand that talks about insurance. And I'm sure you often get questioned about selling fear for profits. Now, what practice do you follow in your content marketing? And is this whole thing of selling insurance really something that really then becomes impediment in the whole storytelling?
Sure, Rohit. I think before I answer the question, let me also set some context with respect to how the insurance category state in India currently is. So, insurance, as we all know, is a very underpenetrated category in India. And to give you a couple of examples of how that would affect people and their families, say, for example, health insurance. We all know, especially in the bigger cities, a good quality healthcare, hospitalization is extremely expensive. Now, what happens is that in case of any hospitalization, whether planned or unplanned, devoid of any kind of insurance, the middle class ends up paying for the hospital bills through their life savings. Sometimes people lose their entire life savings, they have to sell their assets. Also, when there's an unfortunate, untimely death in a family, especially when that's an earning member, the living standard of the family is severely impacted. It impacts the kind of house or the kind of locality the family lives in. It impacts the kind of school the kid goes to and the kind of future he has. Now, these are hard facts. And what's also a hard fact is that middle class consumers don't really have any kind of a protection towards this kind of an uncertainty apart from insurance. Now, what we do in terms of our advertising is just lay the facts on the table. These are the hard facts. We just tell them this is the current scenario, this is the likelihood, and this is an option that is available to you to safeguard yourselves against such an uncertainty at a very affordable price. Now, we don't mince our words. We are a very direct communicator. We do no nonsense, very direct kind of advertising. Uh, but it's very honest, direct advertising, which is just laying out the facts. The intention is not even remotely to sell any kind of fear. It is purely and purely awareness. Uh, and I think it also works for us very well because when you are very honest and direct about what you're communicating and telling people, most people do feel the relevance of it. And it also shows in the kind of response we get. Uh, I understand it's not a very rosy scenario that you might see in insurance advertising generally also. But these are the hard facts of life. We do try and be very sensitive about it,
Yeah.
but I think we need to be very direct about it because this is a severe problem for the entire country. Being at such a low penetration level of advertising of insurance is not very good for the economy. Also, India, in terms of the GDP, the insurance category's contribution to the GDP is one of the lowest in terms of major economies. So I think just trying to be all rosy and not laying the facts on the table, not talking about the hard facts, no matter how harsh they might sound. I think that's not the best option.
Yeah, I agree. Authenticity in this case is really critical. So we have 3 minutes to go. So Shaman, very quickly to you, adding empathy to marketing communications. Let's talk about the importance of having the human factor in content marketing. And we've talked a lot about, human factor, connections, empathy. So what of these, why should these strategies be value driven for consumers?
So, first of all, very quickly, because we just have 3 minutes left and since
I'm sorry to rush you.
No problem. That's more than enough for me. So, essentially the thing is, why is that empathy is even important, right? We as human beings, based on a lot of marketing research that's been done by neuroscientists and neuromarketers globally, what they say is that there are two things that really impact the human brain. We are obviously emotional people driven by emotions and not by logic. So from a marketing perspective purely, there are 5 different emotions that we human beings are governed and impacted the most by. So if you have to sell your product, no matter any category that you are, if you are able to sell on one of these 5 emotions, then that means your marketing is amazing. Number one is of course joy or happiness, right? Second and the most important and the most exciting for any marketer is fear, or fear of missing out, alarming, all of that. Third thing, of course, is sadness, right? I mean, missing out on something sad. Fourth is, of course, anger, a very, very strong emotion. Any sort of rebellion that you can create through anger. And of course, last one being surprise, right? I mean, be it a happy surprise, angry surprise, anything. So these five emotions: joy, anger, fear, sadness, and surprise. So these are the emotions that around which your empathy also rotates. So if your content is if your content is focusing on any one of these emotions, and then the kind of value that it can bring about to your marketing is tremendous. It is massive. And for you to sell your product becomes really easy, irrespective of whether it be a pandemic or a recession. If you're able to carry out the right empathy quotient in your content, and primarily in times of a pandemic, there is a huge opportunity in this adversity. And I hate to say this, I mean, repeatedly talking about opportunities, and people will think that, okay, we entrepreneurs are just talking about money. But the hard fact is that, there is a huge opportunity if you are able to strike the right chord and resonate with your audiences through the right empathy quotient. So empathy, no doubt, is the future of the world.
Yeah, and I love that empathy and AI, right? So that really needs to be integrated together, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's what
great. So Pallavi, last question to you: what's the measurability of B2B content marketing initiatives?
Sure. So I think in B2B, many times what happens is there's not one single person making the decision, right? There's a group of people who might be across functions, and many of them might not also be the end user for this product. And the second thing is you're not spending your own money, it's the company's money. So which means the most important thing which will close the deal or not is trust. And that can only be built if that kind of insight impact is there in the content to showcase that, yes, you are someone who knows your stuff, right? And typically in B2B, in terms of measurement, the things that we look at is one, top of funnel, is it creating curiosity? Are more people coming to our website? Are they Googling us more just to see what we do? Second, at least for us, is still engagement, because in B2B, brands which are very vocal about their marketing, what they do, trying to experiment with various forms are still not many in India. So I think that is another metric. And finally, is our community growing? So more people want to subscribe and find out, okay, what will they come up with next? So these are certain things that are more measurable, because there are a lot more touch points, a lot more dark channel touch points in B2B, given the number of people involved. And finally, what I test is when someone from our company is going into a discussion in a meeting and they say, this is what, I am from Muglik, how positive the response is, when they go in. And that's pretty much going to tell you what is going to happen in that discussion. So that's also kind of a sense check that we keep doing with our team.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists. Thank you all. I think that was a really interesting discussion. Over to you, Nia.
Thank you all the panelists for joining in today and giving us such insightful about content and marketing. Well, that brings us to the end of Indian Digital Brand Fest Summit 2022 Day 4. And once again, I would like to thank our partners for their tremendous support. Presenting partner Woot, our industry support partner Interact, a product of GeoHaptic, Josh, and Pixis. The event is produced and executed by ITV 2.0 Productions. We start with the last day, that is the day 5 of the Indian Digital Brand Fest 2022 sessions tomorrow from 2:30 p.m. onwards. Kindly check the agenda to check out the sessions planned for you tomorrow. On behalf of IndianTelevision.com Group, I would like to thank all the speakers and viewers for taking out your time to join us today. We hope you had a fruitful time. Do share your feedback with us. Use the hashtag DigitalBrandFest2022 in your post and tag our official handles. We can be found at ITV News with a Z on Twitter and Facebook, and IndianTelevision.com on Instagram and LinkedIn. We look forward to e-host you tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. onwards. Don't be late. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.